It is Aunty B,
Hi.
Positivity. Oh, great intro. We'll keep that in there. This is part 2 of the New Year, New Me segment, and I have a very close friend of mine here, Dr. Lauren Kelly, and she is a licensed therapist, and I could not do her justice, so I'm going to let her do her introduction for us today.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lauren Kelly. For today, I'm Lauren. So I am a marriage and family therapist, and a lot of people hear that acronym. They're like, well, what is the MFT? Do you only see couples or families? And no, I see and treat everyone. How I like to describe my background in therapy is I'm a systemic therapist. So I think of not just the diagnosis, I think of the person and their lived experience and their system. So I really like to say I'm a systemic therapist because I am, right? So when I'm treating my clients, I don't really care about depression. I don't really care about anxiety. I care about what's happening in your life, in your community, in the world that's reinforcing anxiety and depression to best protect you in those moments.
That's beautiful. I guess let's get an example of kind of the little caveat. Where did you give me your CV? Like, where did you go to school? What do you work?
So I went to undergrad at Georgia Southern University, one of the best universities in the world. Then I went to Appalachian State to get my master's degree, and I got my PhD from Kansas State. And I currently live and practice. Well, I practice in Kansas as well, but I currently live and practice in Nebraska also.
It's a well-traveled woman, ladies and gentlemen. We love to see it. Okay, so last episode we talked about kind of this New Year, New Me trend, and we talked about it in regards of your physical body. I had my personal trainer on here, Annie, and we talked about the trends of those. But now I want to talk about it in the space of mental health. And when you think about New Year, New Me, and you think about it mental health wise, what do you think about? And do you think of any negative connotations? I can start and then give you some time to think. I think there's a lot, obviously, that comes with just body presentation and changing your body and who you are. But I also think equally when I think about New Year, New Me for mental health, I think about just really strict boundaries, cutting out every toxic person in my life. I'm going to wake up and meditate every day. So I think, again, just like I said with, the New Year, New Me for your body, I think of really big, grandiose goals of changing everything, like you said, systemically, negatively going on in my life. But it's just, I don't think that's a realistic way to go about it. And I don't think that's a healthy way to think because I can't cut out every relationship I have. That's not going to make me happy because I still gain things from those relationships, So when I think about it for myself personally, I'm like, you know what? I didn't like the way they was talking to me last year. I'm never going to talk to them again. And some people can hold that down. I can't. So I'm soft. I'm going to go back and talk to you. So I think for mental health wise, I'm a person that really suffers with anxiety. So I try and just detach myself from things that cause me anxiety or make me anxious. But that's most of my life. My job causes me anxiety. I got to get money. I got to get paid. So I struggle with finding ways to achieve a New Year, New Me mental health wise, because a lot of those relationships are with me long term. And I think something that you'll comment on too is New Year, New Me mental health wise. Oh, it's her bar. So this is not from me, guys. This is from Dr. Kelly. It's indicating that the old you was bad and unhealthy and not good. And I will kind of leave it there and let you give your definition. Thoughts.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I think New Year's resolutions to a certain point are trash because all it's reinforcing is that the person that had survived the previous year was not enough. And just don't look at my health because obviously I know I'm a therapist and I'm a human being that there's this not enough narrative that is huge. And if you think that you haven't been impacted by that, you're probably just not being congruent and in touch enough because it impacts everyone. Yeah, this notion that on the first of the year, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to manifest how to correct all these wrongs. And I'm going to, take the bull by the horn. I'm going to get my body right. I'm going to get my life right. Sure, if you want to do that January 1st, you can. But this notion that you have to, and then if you don't, then you failed, right? Or you've not met this goal. It's just even more toxic and harmful.
Agreed. Something else you kind of talked about when we spoke before is the idea of just societal constructs, right? There's your own personal idea of what you want to change, but can you kind of delve more into the societal construct of New Year, New Me and how that affects people mentally?
Yeah, when I think of new year, new me. And I think what a majority of people think about is weight loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut out carbs. I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to stop drinking soda, alcohol, which obviously if you're struggling with addiction, it's a very different story. So like I put that with a slight caveat for obvious reasons. But why? Like, who is actually telling you that, like, your body is wrong? You know, for most people and fat bodies or larger bodies, right? They're like, oh, I'm so unhealthy, only based off numerical value, right? It's like, are you actually sick? Do you actually have, I don't know, like, are you actually unhealthy?
Do you have diseases? Can you not move around? Are you immobile? Yeah, like.
Right. And obviously, at a certain point, the world is not meant to fit people a certain size, right? Like, that is how we've constructed this. And so there are some tangible things like, yes, you know, weight loss. But to say that, like, oh, I'm 20 pounds overweight based on WHO standards. Don't even get me started on that. I am a strong advocate and believer of health at every size, which is a whole other rant for another day. And let me rant about it. And
we could give a little sprinkle, but let you finish your thought, and then we can talk about it. I think I totally align, and there's so much overlap that I talked about last episode of mental health in your body. So I think getting the rant from you might be what we need. So
for most people. And I understand there is a caveat of people who weight loss is medically necessary for numerous reasons.
Right.
Sure. But for most people, it actually isn't. It's this white patriarchal society that has infiltrated healthcare, that has said if you differ from this ideal body type, which most of us are not going to even match or come close to that, then you are deviant. You are defective, right? And that has permeated into our collective psyche. And so you have these narratives of like, oh, I'm too big, I'm too much, so I'm going to correct these wrongs. I'm going to spend my energy and my time trying to perfect my body in the hopes that I'll be good enough, not for me, but for you. Because what I've seen thousands and thousands of times to my clients, and I've seen a lot of clients, is that people have these like really grandiose goals, which are great. Like, let's have goals and work towards them. But if they're not for you, you'll get to that goal and you'll still feel not enough because it was never about that outcome.
Yes.
Right? Everyone wants to belong. Everyone wants to be accepted. Let's unpack that. Fuck your weight. You know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Right. Big headline, fuck your weight. That needs to be the title. I absolutely agree. Okay. I mean, I think that's kind of what it was. I think yesterday I have to say it for you that you said there's just a bunch of societal bullshit that we have to wade through. And I absolutely agree. And I think that we just have to think, when we think about our goals, are we doing it because we want it to make us feel however, or is it to like make the world happier? Because the reality is we just not going to please the world, to be honest, no matter what you do. Did we get the rant? I got to make sure.
Oh, I can give you the rant.
Give me the rant. Give me the rant about our bodies in the world, honestly.
The rant is, if diets actually worked, the diet industry wouldn't be as well funded and as huge as it is, right? Like, many people are not like, here's this magical solution, like, fix all your things, right? Everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, I feel like most people have in one point of their life struggled with their body.
Yes.
Everyone can't be wrong, right? Like, why do we not question this? You know, and I'm wondering, and I ask my clients, my favorite question, like, I wonder if you weren't at war with your body, what would you be getting? Right? What would be happening, right? If you weren't existing every day of how can I make myself different? What would life actually be like?
Yeah, that's my therapy lineup. Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a great question. Like, you'll never be enough. People who are thin, right? You're too thin. You have no boobs, you have no butt, you have no hips, right? People who do have that, your hips are too big, your butt is too big, right? Like, if you think about beauty standards, every 10 years they change, right?
Yeah,
so
if not more,
my body type, which I'm a Black woman, I have hips, I have butt, I have breasts, right? I was deemed disgusting and this like gross human being 20 years ago, because I wasn't was a heroin thin cheek, right?
Right.
Now you have beautiful embodiment, people like Lizzo, and they're coming in and taking up space, and you have plus size clothes in stores. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. In 20 years, it's going to be like, oh, being 7 feet tall is the ideal, right?
Right.
And if you're not 7 feet tall, like, it's going to constantly keep changing. And if we look back at the medical industry, right? BMI is a made up construct. Insurance companies created it to have a better assessment of like increasing coverage, right? Insurance coverage. Yeah. If you look at this magical 2,000 calories, like it's actually not enough for an adult, right? We're talking about, I believe it's like a 4-year-old should be eating 2,000 calories a day. Right? That number came out of from the war when people were on famines and like, oh, if we say you eat this much, right? We have more ratios. I mean, more rations for everyone else. Like that's not how we live, right? What other bodily function do we pride ourselves on ignoring? For instance, right? If I'm like, oh, Lean, I peed so much yesterday, I'm just not going to pee today. You'd be like, what's wrong with you?
What's going on? Yeah.
You're going to impact your kidneys. You're going to get a bladder infection. You're going to make your stomach upset. Right? Because your body doesn't like when you don't listen to it. Oh, I peed so much today. Like, isn't that so good how much I peed? Like, we don't talk about this, but if I was talking about my hunger, right? Like, oh, I ate some cake yesterday, so I can't eat cake for the rest of the week. That's nonsense, right? Like, or, oh, I ate carbs. You need carbs. You need fats. You need sugars, right? Like, these are all necessary things. And obviously, if you're diabetic, I hold space that there's some medical things you have to work on, right? But, like, for most people, that's not why they're trying to limit their sugars or cut out carbs, right? Like, your body needs these things. And you're being told these things by people who really haven't assessed you. Like, how many times has someone gone to the doctor and the first thing they say is like, oh, you're overweight. This is the cause for all of this. I used to believe, like, my weight. I talked about that. Yeah, or your weight is going to be like, oh, you're going to die. Like, Google anything and it's like overweight death. Like,
literally, I talked about this last episode that I'm in search of a doctor right now, like just a primary care physician, because I have seen 3 in the past like 2 years, and every session is, yeah, man, if you work on your weight, everything will be better. Losing weight is the cure to cancer. Losing weight, I have like ankle pain right now, is the cure to that. Oh, your blood pressure's high. Maybe if you lost 100 pounds, it'll be better. And it's like, I have like asthma. Like, what does my weight have to do with my lungs? Like, can you please treat me as a human being and not as an overweight person?
Literally, I literally, like, and that's the thing too. Like, people don't even know this. You can deny being weighed at the doctor's office.
Did not.
It's not necessary. We just do it because we're conditioned to do it, right? Yeah. I had a client, true story. I had a huge cyst. Doctors wouldn't treat her because they said she was fat and if she lost weight, or something to go away, right? Then we did some work and I said, you need to demand they treat you as if you were underweight. If you were underweight, what they do, right? She had to go to 3 doctors. I helped her to find a doctor who practices on health at every size, which I encourage everyone to find a doctor who practices with the ideologies of health at every size, no matter what society has in your body, whether big, thin, fat, underweight. Find a doctor who does that, or a nutritionist who does that. It will change your life, I swear. But anyways, we finally found a doctor who would do that. That's how she got diagnosed. Had this cyst for years, causing tremendous pain. Right. Yeah. But because she was fat, the doctors were completely blinded, right? Like, people are dying because of this implicit bias that we have that is upholded by insurance companies, is upholded by toxic diet cultures and toxic beauty standards, right? Like, this is a problem.
Agreed. Okay. All right. Let me rein this back in. Rant needed, though. We did need that. My next question is, I'm sure, right? I know you're on social media. I'm on social media. Mental health is very trendy right now. You roll through, scroll through, and I love it. Listen, I got the little aesthetic girl cups. Okay. I want to have my things color coordinated. This podcast at a certain point, right, is a part of like the mental health trend. Like, I started in this era, but I just kind of wanted your thoughts on how we disassociate like mental health is trendy. We see like BetterHelp commercials all the time. I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I think there are also other kinds of therapy that you may be able to explain a little, but to tunnel kind of the question, mental health is really trendy right now. When do you think a person needs to go to therapy, and why should people go to therapy?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm a therapist, but to live in this world is to experience trauma, point blank, period. Yeah. Right. And so when we talk about trauma, for many people, I tell my clients, big T trauma versus little T trauma, right? And society and the media tells us that only big T trauma is a trauma that's worthy of healing or acknowledgement, not even healing, acknowledgement. And when I say big T trauma, I often think of murder, death, rape, genocide, right? Sure. Awful, right? I hope that happens to no one.
Yeah.
But for most people, that's never going to happen. Right?
Well,
so
unless you're a woman, but yeah.
Right. So big T trauma here, little T trauma here, right? It's probably like this much of the scale. The rest of the scale is the things that happen to us constantly. Embarrassment, shame, emotional, psychological abuse, right? Financial abuse, sexual abuse. Physical abuse, right?
Yeah.
And you have all these things that happen that we've been conditioned to minimize.
Yes.
Right. And so I think if people were to think of your childhood, think of your jobs, right? Think of horrible relationships. You know, I always hear people say like, oh, I'm empathic. And sure, maybe you are, but I've never met a person who is empathic that hasn't also experienced a lot of trauma. Right? Because what they're really saying is I have a higher attunement to understand dysfunction and pain. Right? So I have yet to find a person who couldn't benefit from therapy. Does everyone need to be in therapy for numerous years? No. Do some people? Absolutely. Right? Scaling issue.
I think you've kind of talked to me about this. I'm just like in like talk therapy, like cognitive behavior therapy. What are like just a few like high level, like different types of therapy? Because I think some people think like, oh, I manage, I have my coping mechanisms, I'll be okay. But then like they experience trauma, or like I was having like active panic attacks at a time and I didn't know how to navigate those. What are like different versions of therapy besides just going to sit down and chat?
Yeah, so I'm trained in EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And I think it's incredible to help move trauma, right? You may have seen it or heard of it. People using eye movements, so going back and forth. So people can use sound, lights, or tapping. You can do EMDR in person. You can do EMDR online as well. And so I know that, especially when the pandemic happened, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I guess I can't do that if I can't go into an office. And that's not true at all. I have a virtual practice where I see people, like I said, in Kansas, by Nebraska, and we do EMDR every single session. It's beautiful. There's different types of modalities. You have IFS, which I also love, internal family systems, which is looking at parts work. I think TikTok has really taken the aspect of this, of the inner child, right? And that's what's called parts work. Everyone has parts within yourself. Like, you all have experience. My head saying one thing, my heart saying another thing, right? If you were in the office with me, we would deconstruct, like, what is that part? How old is that part? How does that part think that you are, right? And doing this type of work. There's many modalities. There's narrative therapy, there's solution focus, there's CBT, there's psychodynamic. Really, when I'm teaching or working with my supervisees, I call it equifinality, right? And equifinality really means there's infinite points. There's infinite ways to get to the same point. So I argue with people who are like, there's one therapy is the best, right? I think that every clinician is a different person, right? And so how you view and treat change is unique to you and your personhood. And I think a good therapist is able to hold space that they're human first, therapist second, right? And then you can connect and relate that. So there's numerous modalities. Obviously, there's different types of therapies, whether you have physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. But in terms of mental health, right, that's the different types of modalities.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. I didn't even know all that, and I've been going to therapy for years. So last time on my last episode, I talked about like kind of goals and how to make healthy goals for your body, like strength goals as opposed to like weight goals or walking goals as opposed to, waist size goals. So I have personally been in my therapy talking about like a self-love journey and kind of building my self-confidence. I'm a smart, beautiful person, and I don't think that way about myself all the time. So I have kind of been trying to work on that through my own personal therapy. And then I kind of brought the idea up to you. And what are your thoughts on like self-love and maybe what's a healthier perspective?
I hate that term self-love, right? Not because it's not important, but whenever we force love, is it actually real and authentic? Right? No. And as I previously stated, right, we're living in a world that tells us we should hate ourselves, hate our bodies, we should hate our jobs, like we should hate everything about us to make us better. With this goal, we don't really know what the goal even is, right? So I'm working with my clients, self-love, way too big, right? That's like such a far distant goal, especially if you're coming in crisis, right? Like,
right.
No. self-neutrality. Obviously, my hope is that one day we all will feel this authentic self-love. I want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want that for everyone. But that's not what we're going to work towards. We're going to work to neutrality. We're going to work on how can you be comfortable in the skin you're in? How can you look at the things that maybe you want to enhance or change because you actually want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of weight loss, right? Like if you want to lose weight, why? And if it's like, okay, because I want to be able to move better, great.
Right.
Let's work towards that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want you to be thin so your boyfriend John will stay.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Fuck John. Yeah.
Fuck John.
So I think something you said last night that I thought about too, is just self-love versus acceptance. And I'll give my thoughts and then maybe you can ponder on that as I go. But I thought self-love, the way I thought about it was acceptance. And maybe that was just my own like mental sphere of understanding it. But I do like you're kind of framing it of saying like, we need neutrality because sometimes I don't like Auntie B. Sometimes I don't like Baleen. Sometimes I don't like the decisions I make. But I do still need to care for myself and be kind to myself. And I guess that's how I think about love though, right? Like there are points where everyone in our life I think that we love has hurt us, but I still want to love them and be present for them. But I will say, again,
but can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
You want to love them because they've shown up at a time where you've had authentic love. That's the difference here, right? And I think self-love gets conflated with toxic positivity.
Oh, hold on. Let's talk about that one because I have said that like on episodes by myself. Okay, let me finish my thought and then we need to talk about, let me put a note, toxic positivity. I think acceptance is a healthier goal, a more understandable goal. And I think it gives us more space to give grace to ourselves that if the goal is, well, let me just get back to nothing. Like, let me get back to being like, this is who I am today. And that's okay. If it's a good day or a bad day, I'm still me. And that's okay. Whereas I do think a lot of us are chasing, like you said, toxic positivity. And to me, like yesterday I had a really low day and I share like on my Instagram, like, man, I'm just having a mental funk right now. Nothing was wrong. Nothing happened. I just didn't feel like doing it. And I was like, tried to be at first really mean to myself. It's like, you need to force feeling good and doing great. And it's like, nah, I'm going to clean. I'm going to watch TV on my couch and kind of ride this wave out. And that was okay. But if I was trying to live in this fear of like, I'm always Auntie B, positivity, then I would have kind of forced myself to feel feelings that weren't authentic to myself. So I wonder for you, what does toxic positivity mean? And how do you kind of see that show up maybe in your sessions, if you could talk about that? Yeah.
Rant number 5.
Okay. That's what this is. We're here to rant.
Yeah. Like toxic positivity is this notion that negative, that and I don't say negative, right? But like our emotions or feeling sensations that have been deemed as maladaptive by this like invisible panel of judges that we all live trying to appease, right?
Yeah.
It's going to see you deviant, right? Like, no, if you're having a shit day, you're having a shit day. Like, you get to say that, you get to honor that, right? Like, I tell my clients, like, and I know this is a question we talked about before, but I'll bring it in now. Like, people come in all the time, like, Dr. Kelly, I just want to be happy. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And I'm saying we only understand happiness because we know sadness. And people don't put that into perspective, you know? And so I don't want my clients to be happy all the time. That's literally part of mania. Like, there's more diagnosable things, but you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want you to be able to experience your emotions authentically. When you can do that, check. We are done. I did my job. You're good to go. Right? I don't want my clients like, oh my gosh, I was sad. I'm going to beat myself up. Like, I'm not allowed to be sad. I'm not allowed. Like, no, we're living in a world that is pure of chaos, that hatred is getting huge platforms of support. Xenophobia is at like a disgusting high. Racism, sexism, transphobia, like all these things are happening. Why are we acting like we should be happy and positive in this?
Okay.
Right? Like, no, I am a therapist. I am married to a therapist. Some of my best friends are also therapists, right? And I can't tell you how many times like we'll call each other and be like, it's been awful, and we cry and we grieve. Like, that's me showing up authentically. I get angry. Sometimes I act in ways that are unlovable, right? And I'm like, ooh, Lord, pull that back together.
Tighten it up,
right? I'm a human being. And to act as if I am above emotions that I seem to be negative. Bullshit. Right? And if I can't sit in those emotions, I don't deserve the other ones. Like, why?
Yeah.
right? And some of the most depressed, lonely, and angry people that, in my experience, are the ones that tell themselves that they have to be happy.
A mood. I feel that. I used to tell that to myself literally daily. So.
And were you happy?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I'm sure I had moments of happiness, but the reminder, like I think I've spoken about this myself, like on my platform, but the more I tell myself I need to be happy is the more I remind myself that I lack. And that creates a whole spiral of like, I'm failing to achieve happiness. And it's like, well, you're definitely not going to be happy now. Right. The way you talking to yourself.
Once you get to this happiness, like once you actually like are happy, it never feels enough because you've completed this like magical moment, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay. Mm-hmm. Right? And like, now what? What's next?
And I agreed. And I think understanding that kind of emotions are this ebb and flow. And I try and bask in my happiness and be kind to myself in my sadness and know that they're kind of a system, but a work in progress. Like I said, I was unkind to myself yesterday morning for being in a funk. And I was like, but why? Like, I can't control my feelings. I'm just going to ride the wave. So
there we go.
Well, you kind of said it, but I do want to talk about, you said the most frequent goal people ask when they come to therapy for you is I want to be happy. Mic drop already, because how the hell am I going to get at you as a therapist? You know, I don't know how we can even get there. So kind of, can you elaborate a little bit more on that? And then what do you think is a healthier goal for people to have going into therapy? Because I think for someone like I grew up with like Caribbean parents, right? Therapy was very taboo. This was not a thing. And you and other people in my life were like, nah, girl, you need to go talk to somebody. You got some stuff going on. And I said, okay, that's fine. Mm-hmm. So what do you think a healthy like goal in going to therapy is? Because I think just maybe mentally healthy is way too big. Like that's very large and grand. So
yeah, I think peace, contentment, healing, understanding, acknowledgement. Some of the most important and often most difficult sessions I have as a clinician is acknowledging and accepting that trauma actually happened. You have no idea how much time I spend. I say arguing in loving ways. So like my clients here, they'd be like, "No, it's not actually arguing." By my mind, I'm like, "We're gonna get you there."
Yeah.
Right? It's like, no. I'm using an example. No, Beline, this thing that happened wasn't some minor inconvenience. I know that your parents said that you're okay. You should get over it. But who benefited in that narrative? Don't think it was you.
Now right? It's becoming a session. Yeah.
Right. Right. And like, and that's the thing too, like I want people to understand you can hold people accountable and still love them. I know the world doesn't tell us that you can do that, but you can. Right. And a lot of people come in like, I can't process this trauma. I can't process this pain because if I do, then I would have to hate my parents, my blah, blah, blah. Right. Or it would invalidate the safety that I thought I had. First of all, if you're even questioning that, you already like parts of you know that you're not safe. Right. The other part is that healing doesn't mean you're mandated to do anything. Healing means that you have options and that you have self-understanding and self-acceptance, right? You do whatever you want with that. And obviously I'm talking about my perspectives and how I think of therapy. I mean, there's 1,000 therapists or 1,000 different ways to be a therapist out there. Some really great, some really bad, right? Like, and you probably have all had bad therapy experiences, great therapy experiences.
Yeah.
But for my clients, I am 100% on your team, right? But that means holding you accountable. That means calling you out when you're doing something that's problematic or harmful or toxic. But that also means if you're like, I processed this trauma with this person, it hurt me, it harmed me, and I still want them in my life. Okay, how do we hold both? And not minimize the one that makes that person uncomfortable or the system uncomfortable. How can you hold both? That is healing, and that's my goal. And that's why I talk with my clients about and see, like, is that something that you want? Because I'm not going to be a therapist and blindly be like, yep, you're right. Like, I might not be your best fit. And that's okay too. Like therapy, the most important thing in therapy is therapist-client fit. Like if you're not safe and jiving with your therapist, find another one. There's a billion of us out there.
Yes. I will say, just like from my experience, it's really about like, it's like dating your therapist in a certain way, right? Like you need to feel safe. And my last bout of therapy was definitely around like my career and like bar prep, internal, like kind of imposter syndrome. And I needed my therapist to be like, why do you feel this way? And I'm like, oh, I should feel this way. And the response is, who told you to feel that way? And I had to be able to confront and answer those questions. But if I didn't feel safe to do that, I'd be like, I'm shutting this down. I'm not ready to face this.
Yeah.
So
And one of
being
my
able to do
biggest
that.
advices for your audience, for you, for anyone who's listening, is if you are with someone who says they don't work with trauma, don't understand trauma, don't deal with trauma, find a new clinician.
Yeah.
Find a new clinician, right? I think at a certain point in time that was helpful, but research, I'm a researcher, right? Like research has shown us trauma and having a clinician who understands trauma is also really important as well.
Yes.
Right? So it needs to be fit and competent.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And that's because there's a lot of great clinicians out there. There's also a lot of really harmful ones.
Okay. Yeah. And if you, just like, you know, we tell people like me, get a second opinion when you go to the doctor, get a second opinion when you go to therapy. If somebody's telling you to do something that you feel like is just really against your person, against your morals or whatever, like talk to someone else. It might be that you need to confront that thing and place that boundary or do whatever, but it also might mean that they're pushing you to do something that's not healthy or safe for you. And, you know, at a certain point, like you are still in control of your life. A therapist gives you advice, gives you ways to understand and mechanisms to cope, but like you still know what's best for you at the end of the day because it's your life. So 2 questions left, I think. We can kind of put them together. I know this is a really big topic, so let's just try and, I guess, focus in as much as we can. How do you think, we talked about a good goal for therapy is like safety and contentment and peace. How do you think that boundaries play into that? And I know that's really big, but I kind of just want to give my thought and then you give your thought. Boundaries has been just a struggle for my whole life. I'm a big people pleaser, make people happy, make people comfortable. But at the cost of that, it saps me of my peace and my joy and my happiness, because if it's your joy or mine, I'm choosing you. But then over time, I learn to resent you and then I feel unsafe and unhappy. So in this kind of phase of my mental health journey, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Or you need me right now, I'm going to show up for this, but it makes me uncomfortable that you asked me to do this. And I think I'm just now getting to the point where I feel confident enough to do that. And that is helping me feel safe. And when people respond negatively to me saying that boundary, I'm like, cool, cool, cool. I'm glad that I know. Ain't no problem. I will remember that this isn't a relationship that will respect kind of this choice. So you can, I guess, maybe if you can just give like a broad level definition of boundaries and then how you think it can help people get to safety.
Yeah, I think the most common misconception with boundaries is that they're for the other person. They're not. Boundaries are for you. Right? And so, like you said, I am a strong believer that you cannot have a safe, authentic, and meaningful relationship if they're not healthy boundaries that are being respected. And there's different types of boundaries, right? You can have really rigid boundaries where it's like a hard line, like I will not budge on that, right? Like a boundary for me in my relationships, you can't be racist, you can't be homophobic, you can't be transphobic, you can't be homophobic, right? Like none of the isms. Like that's a hard boundary that I have for myself and relationships in my life. Like if you do that, this relationship is unsalvageable in my opinion.
The door, yeah.
Right? Well, there's other type of boundaries that are more diffused, right? And which means that they can ebb and flow, right? Punctuality, right? Like if we're gonna go get lunch and we're gonna meet at 1, don't show up at 3. Respect my time, right?
Please.
But if your child threw up and it was chaos, okay. I can have compassion and forgive, right? Like that's a weird example, a thing off the top of my head here, but like could be a diffused boundary. And so, yeah, so when you set boundaries, right? If I'm like, Beline, if you say something racist or homophobic, we're done, right? And let's say you say something racist, homophobic, which I know you would literally never even would intentionally.
Definitely not intentionally.
All right, I set that boundary, right? If I don't show up to that boundary, okay, that's on me. Now, if you and I are in a relationship and he knows about me and you choose to do it again, right? Like we can have a pair. And I can say, oh, you crossed my boundary. Please don't do it again. If you do it again, that's on me. And that's what boundaries are for. And a lot of people think boundaries are like, oh, I set this boundary, you need to respect it. And I'm devoid of responsibility of enforcing it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, like you were describing, resentment comes in, right? Because if I'm like, hey, you can't use my car, and then, well, you use your car, use your car, right? Like, now I'm the type of way because my boundary being violated, but I also have some accountability in that.
Yeah.
Right?
See, these are hard conversations, ladies and gentlemen, because for me, I'm pretty good now at telling someone my boundary. Like, I don't want you to call me when I'm at work. Like I have sick parents, a lot of doctors call me. I don't want you parent to call me at work, but then they be calling me and then I answer the phone. Okay. So then I'm mad at work, having breakdowns at my job, trying to talk to my clients and also deal with my parents. And I'm, hearing this is good for me too, to reinforce like, no, it was on me. I said, don't call me. And then I chose to violate my boundary by answering the phone. obviously, you know, our parents were like in hospitals and things like that. So you choose when to do it. But then there are other times where it's like, could you order me some food? No, I'm at my job. So then I get angry that my boundaries violated, but I didn't put in the work to set it. So I think we all can take a second to know that there's certainly in any mental health journey, the weight is on you to like really push it forward.
Yeah, I tell clients all the time. Like, I am an expert on therapy. I'm a novice on your life, right? I can literally give you, which I would never say this obviously, but I could give you bullet points. Do this, 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 and you'll be happy and cured, whatever you want. Right. Which I don't really believe in English. I don't know why I use that language, but you will meet your goals, right? You will meet your goals.
Yeah.
Once you leave me for an hour, it's on you, baby. Like,
it is.
I tell my clients, when you come to me, we're doing like, obviously we're deconstructing, but I want to be building upon it. If you're not implementing talking outside of therapy, there's nothing to build on. It's on you. And that's the hard part in therapy, right? Like, people are like, oh, I don't want somebody to tell me what to do with my life. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. You're coming to me and saying, I need help. I talk about like putting together a puzzle, right? There's all these pieces that are scrambled. I'm helping you find the pieces, but it's up to you to put them in the right order to make this picture.
Yeah.
I'm just helping you search. That puzzle's on you. Like,
honey, that's true.
Puzzle, right? Like,
another thing, guys. I think we don't have time for this second segment. We'll have another episode later in the year. I'm a family law attorney. I do divorce. You're a therapist. We are human beings. So like in our professional capacity, like we have feelings and reactions and triggers. So just like if I had a legal issue, I would get a lawyer. Like if you needed it, we'll probably get a therapist. Like we are all humans trying to navigate these professions. So while we are like in existence to like help and serve and aid people, like we also have boundaries. We have to keep us professionals and create like separation. So it's not really a question.
People get mad at me all the time. They'll like call me on the weekend or after hours, like, oh, my partner and I got in a fight. Here's all the screenshots. I will get to this at your normal scheduled time, right? Or within business hours, and people get really upset with me. And in my first session, this is my boundary. I have a family. I have my own mental health. I am not an on-call 24/7 service. But there are some clinicians who are, which is great for them.
Right. Well, I don't see how it could be, but
well, that's the boundary that they chose to have.
Right.
But because I respect myself, I respect my family, I respect you as a client, I have to set these boundaries because I don't want to resent you. I don't want to be like, you're calling me again.
Right.
Now, obviously, if you were my client, you got hospitalized and the hospital's calling me, well, I don't answer my phone, right? And I have them, people come my clients for a session. But as soon as I get back in office, I'm going to check in on you, right? Yeah. And that's how that boundary works. But if you're sending me screenshots, which people do, right? They text me screenshots.
Oh, same. Yeah.
Unread until Lane's time is Sunday or Monday at 11 a.m. At Monday at 10:58, I'm reading that type message. Right.
Yeah.
That's my boundary.
Okay, this was so helpful. So where's a good place for people to start, right? Where do they look and try and find a therapist? And I think something, she is obviously not my therapist. She's just my family friend, but I went through really hard and rough time a year and a half ago. And you taught me a lot of like good little breathing techniques. So I wonder if you could tell me where to start with therapy, and then maybe we could just do a short one together.
Yeah. So psychologytoday.com is a beautiful resource for therapists. It's literally a database for therapists and psychiatrists nationwide, right? So you type in your zip code or type in, I know a lot of people may not live in areas where they have access to clinicians, right? So you can type in a zip code or maybe a zip code you're willing to drive to or a zip code within your state to find clinicians that are listed there. And we all have bios and profiles. And I encourage you to read the bios. Don't just look at people's pictures. Pictures are very deceiving, right? Yeah. Look at the bios, listen to who they are. If they're like, oh, I only work from a specific perspective, maybe they only work from a Christian perspective and you're Buddhist, right? Like maybe that's not the best clinician for you. Maybe, you want someone who's competent, skilled in trauma, and someone's like, oh, well, I just help you get rid of dysfunction. I don't work with trauma. Probably not the best. Well, you should. That's on a rant. Right. Person, right. And like you said earlier, I tell my clients, our first session, therapy is dating. You might meet me and automatically like, you're not my person. Great. My ego is not that big. I'll have to find the right person. Yeah. You might meet me and be like, okay, let's test this out. And we spend some time together, like, doesn't work out. You might meet me and be like, oh, this is my person forever. Right. Yeah. It's like dating. I don't want a therapist's prior ego to keep you from getting the life you want.
Yeah.
Find the person that works for you. So I would start there. Also, referrals are the best source, right? Because people can say a whole bunch of words. It really counts when you're in that room together, in the virtual room together. So if you have friends or colleagues, family members that are in therapy and they're like, oh, I love my therapist for these reasons, see if they have openings. Get on wait list too. Like, don't just give up if someone's busy. People drop out of therapy all the time for various reasons. Insurance changes, income changes. They no longer need therapy. So get on the wait list, see what happens. As for breathing techniques, one of my favorite things to do is to go through the 5 senses, right? So if you're anxious, having a panic attack, your brain can't do 2 things at once. A little bit of free neuroscience for you. So if I tell you, Belen, think of the color pink and think of an elephant. Either you're thinking of an elephant that's pink, or your brain's oscillating between an elephant and the color pink. Right?
Okay.
You can't hold
both. It was a pink elephant. Yeah.
Exactly. You can't hold both thoughts at once. Right? So when you're having anxiety and when you're having a panic attack, you need to disrupt your brain. So really quickly, if you don't mind, would you be my assistant?
Your muse? Yes, absolutely.
Vanna White. Okay. So close your eyes for me. If closing your eyes is not practical or you feel unsafe, you can keep them open. But I want you to think of 5 things you can hear in your space. Right? It doesn't really matter the senses you go in order. I'm going to do it really quickly. I would encourage you to do this very slowly and intentionally. The slower, the better. Think of 5 things you can see. Think of 3 things you can smell in the space. Think of 2 things you can taste. Think of 1 thing you can touch, right? Now, please, go much slower than that. much slower. Be really thoughtful and intentional. Another thing you could do is breathing techniques, right? So I want you to imagine those like big metal farm buckets, you know what I'm talking about? Like the big buckets. Imagine that sitting in your lap, and the top of that bucket is like right at the tip top of your rib cage. When I want you to inhale, I want you to fill that entire bucket up with air. So do it for me, please. Yeah, I mean, your lungs should be ballooned.
Right,
like, okay? But when you do that, I want you, taking all the air, I want you to hold it. And count to 5. 1, Mississippi. 2, Mississippi. 3, Mississippi. 4, Mississippi. And on 5, Mississippi, I want you to push out as hard as you can. Like that bucket's been turned all the way over.
Well, that felt great. Y'all should do that anyway.
I tell my clients, I made the mistake of like, do it 5 times. But clients are like, okay. Fast breathing increases the nervous system's activity, which will start to increase anxiety.
Okay.
Right? If you're having a panic attack, if you're panicking, I want you to slow it down. Slow it down. So set a timer for 5 minutes. And do that in cycles for 5 minutes, right? If you need more, do it for 6. Add a couple more minutes, right? And then do it for 6 minutes, right? Keep scaling up until you feel your body. You aren't really dysregulated, so you're like, oh, I felt it.
Yeah, no, the breathe out was like, oh, I feel like I just went to the chiropractor. Yeah, it feels great.
If you're more dysregulated or in higher level of crisis or panic, it's going to take you more time, right? Which is okay. So those are 2 easy tricks you can do at home. Yep.
A gem. Okay. Well, I cannot give you referrals because I live in Georgia, but if you guys ever go, out, was it the
Kansas, Nebraska?
Yeah. Pull up on you, girl. Thank you so much. This is so helpful. I really appreciate having all of the intersectionality in our conversations today, because I think that's just a needed perspective that everyone can kind of benefit from. Takeaway, y'all, do some deep breathing, go to therapy. Even if it's just for a session, you need it. Okay, you need it. Yes.
And thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to be on your platform.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye.